Forgetting to unlock my bedroom door saved me. Almost a year ago I, 24M, was fresh out of college and had just moved into an apartment with my middle school bestie, 23F, and her fiancé, 25M. This was after a long period of not seeing her in person. My bestie and I had a long and great relationship with few rocky periods. I didn't know fiancé well but had met him a couple times. He came off as kind of rude and loud but mostly nice enough. I let a lot of little annoying behaviors slide because she was so in love with him. I really just wanted to spend time with my best friend. Over the course of a few months, I slowly discovered that she was trapped in an abusive relationship with the most classic example of a malignant narcissist imaginable. Their fights, really just him raging at her while she cried, escalated to the point where he was completely trashing the apartment, breaking her phone and laptop, hiding her car keys, blocking the door, and grabbing her arm so hard she had bruises. All while hurling out the worst insults he could fathom at the top of his lungs for hours. This man is about a foot taller and 100 pounds heavier than me, so there was nothing I could do other than give her a ride somewhere else away from him until the next day. He didn't like it when I did that. Once it reached the point of physical harm against her, I put my foot down and demanded that he move out or I would call the cops. He wasn't technically signed onto the lease, so I could have him kicked out. He begged for time to find a new place. He was extremely drunk and high the night he hurt her, and he promised to stay sober until he moved. Not wanting to escalate things, I agreed on the condition that nothing like that ever happen again. My friend and her fiancé broke up soon after that. 3 weeks pass and everything is going great. Ex-fiancé has found a new place, is in training for a new job, and while still loud and inconsiderate, he hasn't caused any problems so far. I get ready for bed early. I have an important meeting early tomorrow. I put on some comfy pajamas, locking my door before I change out of habit. My bestie is out working, and it's just me upstairs in bed and ex-fiancé downstairs yelling on the phone about something. I tune him out and try to sleep. He's moving out next week. My chest rattles from the booming footfalls up the stairs to my room, waking me from sleep. My eyes snap open to see my bedroom doorknob rattling back and forth. Locked. He lets out a yell of pure malice and bangs on my door. He screams my name and it's so slurred he sounds like he's trying to impersonate a lizard man. The hinges aren't looking so good. We lived in a crappy cheap apartment with thin doors. I have to do something before he breaks open the door, right? I say the only thing I can think of. What the fuck? Suddenly the banging and screaming stops. My doorknob falls still. After a terrifying moment of silence, he says flatly, "Open the door, bud. Just come and open the door." I still laugh about that one. Like after all that I'd just walk over and open up. Instead, I grabbed my essentials and jumped out the window. I was on the second floor, but we lived on a hill so the fall wasn't quite that high. Still managed to fall wrong. I hobbled as quickly as I could to my car and peeled away. I called my best friend and warned her not to go home. We made plans for her to stay with a friend after she got off work. I made it to the friend's house and passed out for a few hours. I woke up to a call from my bestie. He traveled all the way to her workplace with a knife and broke in. He assaulted her and held the knife up to her special needs client's throat and said he'd kill him in front of her. Thank God a coworker overheard everything in another room and was able to call the police in time for everyone to come out alive. My bestie also said he was on the phone with her while he was banging on my door and he said he was going to kill me and make her listen. I was totally alone in the apartment with him, sleeping upstairs in my bed. If I hadn't locked my door that night, would I even still be alive? If I had left my car keys downstairs, would I have been able to get away? When I returned to my apartment the next morning, my bedroom door was completely kicked in. My belongings were scattered everywhere. And the large butcher knives were missing from the kitchen, instead sitting in the corner of the hallway to my room. Man keeps trying to come into my house. I, 20F, recently moved into a new apartment with my BF who works away for long periods of time. A older man, 50, started to become friendly with me knowing I was new to the complex. I made the mistake of telling him I live with my partner but he's away for work for a while. Almost every day after that he came knocking on my door and waiting if I didn't answer. He would leave after 5 minutes of knocking with no answer. One time I was out in the common grass area playing with my brother, 2M, that I would occasionally have over. I saw him coming my way and quickly picked my brother up. The men started making conversation asking about my brother and literally tried to grab him out of my arms. I held onto my brother tight and pulled away, and as he started to cry I made an excuse that I have to go feed him and walked away. That was the last time I went near that man with my brother. I'm extremely bad with confrontation, as you can tell. A few days later I heard a knock at my door and opened it without thinking. He walked straight past me into my apartment without even saying a single word, just smiling. I asked him if he was doing okay. He said, "I'm good, just wanted to see what your place looked like from the inside," and started walking into every room. He checked all my windows and commented, "So all your windows have bars on them except the bathroom?" I nervously laughed and said, "Yeah, I guess they do." I didn't know what to do. So I walked out into the front garden hoping he would follow me out of the apartment to try talk to me. I just wanted him out but was scared to anger him. I could tell he didn't seem like he was right in the head. Once he came out the front I closed my door and said, "I have to go to the shop now, sorry, it's going to close soon," and walked off. That night while hanging my washing out, another neighbor introduced herself, 34F. I told her what happened and asked if she knew the man. Apparently he had been doing the exact same things to her. She told her partner that this creepy neighbor was doing the same things to a young girl, me, and that was his last straw. He ended up going and talking to the older man. After that the older man only tried one more time that I know of to knock on my door, which I hid in my kitchen for 10 minutes until he left. I haven't heard anything since and haven't seen him around, but I wake up at night panicking thinking that he's planning on doing something to me. Edit, since there's too many comments for me to reply to, haha. Thank you guys for all the helpful comments too. My windows are glass so there's no way I can even put a lock on it, and I talked to management and there's nothing they can do since he stopped now apparently. I'm thinking of possibly filing a report with the police so it's at least on record. Someone tried to follow me home yesterday and now I don't want to leave the house. So someone was following me home yesterday, and now I don't want to leave the house. I-15F was walking home from the store yesterday and I saw a black box car drive past me extremely slow and the man in the car clearly watching me. And when he fully passed me I saw him watching me in his rear view mirror. I thought it was weird and slowed down my pace so that I could tell if he was waiting for me or just a slow driver. He was still driving extremely slow, but moved a little when he saw two guys riding past on bikes. He then moved to the edge of the short street we were on and waited there. I was still towards the beginning of the street so I acted like I forgot something and turned around to get out of his sight. I waited and kind of peeked out to see if he had left, and when I saw he was gone I continued walking. I didn't think it would happen but I made a mental note that if I saw the car behind me, it meant he circled back around. After I continued walking I made 3 turns and was 3 turns away from my house. When I was walking up a little hill and almost at the 4th turn I looked back and saw the man at the corner I had just turned from, letting me know he circled back around to find me. He sat there watching me continue walking until I got up the little hill and turned the corner. Then as I had just barely made the last turn and was close to my house I saw the man's car just turn the corner up the street. Straight across from the way I was walking, waiting there. I pulled out my phone to call my mom and walked the other way and he left soon after I pulled out my phone. My mom came out and walked with me back to the house and I didn't see the car for the rest of the day. But I keep thinking, he knows what neighborhood I stay in. What if he comes back? What if the next time he comes back I'm out by myself again? What if no one's home to call? What if he sees me leaving and comes back when I'm the only one home? I'm so scared he's going to come back I don't want to go outside. I don't want to show him where I live, especially because I'm home alone very often. I have summer school and I have to go but I don't want to leave the house in fear he might be waiting for me. And I'm constantly looking out the windows to see if I can spot him. Especially since if he was at the store I was at, he definitely stays somewhere near the neighborhood. A big man in a truck starts following and cussing me out, so this happened about 5 years ago. A little background first: my dad had trained me in how to keep calm in stressful or life and death situations. I did the same with my kids. My kids were 12 and 13 years old and in the back seat. My elderly mom was right next to me. We had just finished our errands and I asked if anyone wanted to go to the popular small lake that has a one-way road going around it about 1 mile circular, before going home. They all immediately wanted to do so, mostly to see the new duck chicks. There is a maximum speed limit of 20 miles per hour and several places to exit if you don't want to go completely around. The reason for the low speed limit is a lot people go here for fishing, walking or jogging. We got to see the baby ducks and slowed to a stop at times. There wasn't other cars behind us yet, to awe over the tiny chicks. I was halfway around when this huge man in a big truck went racing around the lake going about 50 miles per hour. There was a lot of screaming from people racing to get out of his way. I immediately started to speed up to take an exit off the road. I was almost there when I heard the truck engine. My mom screamed. The kids were frozen in fear as I looked into the rearview mirror. He was coming up fast on me. He slammed on the brakes and came just inches from hitting the back of my car. Then started following me, aggressive and screaming all sorts of insults at me. I sped up and got out there, but he kept following me. My mom was freaking out. My kids were terrified but doing the breathing exercises that I taught them to keep themselves calm. I yelled at my mom to shut the fuck up. I threw my cell phone to my oldest son and told him to call 911 and inform the dispatcher that we were headed to the police station and to please have a few cops waiting for us. He did so, and at times screaming in fear as this man went down a side street and turned back to ram us off the road. He would get in front of me and slam on brakes, parked blocking the road, or do a pit maneuver. I later thanked God that my dad had been in the military and taught me maneuvers to avoid aggressive drivers. I was able to avoid all the things he was doing. The dispatcher heard the terrified screams every time I had to brake hard or swing the car around. I was cussing like crazy. We made to the police station where there was several cops waiting for us. The guy was so angry that I don't think he realized where we were. He parked right behind me to block me in. Got of his truck still screaming around to my side. Got even more angry when the cops wouldn't let him near me. He swung out and punched one of the cops so hard in the head that he was knocked out. He got tasered and sprayed as he was tackled down. It took several cops to hold him down when he suddenly went quiet. He suddenly realized just where he was and began struggling again, saying that they couldn't arrest him because he didn't know they were cops at the moment. I let out a relieved breath once he was in the back seat of a cop car. Paramedics came to check us all out. My mom had to be taken to the ER for extremely high blood pressure and suffering from chest pains. My kids and I were taken in as well. The moment that they realized that they were safe, the hysterical crying and clinging to me started. I was shaking and felt cold despite the warm temperatures. I was told that I was in shock after we all came home except for my mom, who had to stay overnight. The kids were too terrified to sleep in their beds and wanted to sleep with me. But we were all too wired up to sleep, so I made some sleepy time tea and gave them melatonin. I, on the other hand, didn't take anything, and the comforting noises my home usually makes became scary. A few days later, I got a call from one of the arresting officers who told me that the man had several arrest warrants on him for similar things. He also told me that the guy had every intention of killing me and everyone else in my car simply because he was angry and wanted to release it. So it was a good thing that I called 911 and went to the police station. It would take me a few weeks before I could fall asleep easily again. I had to put my kids into counseling and I still have nightmares from it, but it's really rare now. Creepy encounter on bike trail that still gets to me. Okay, so this happened when I was 21. I'm currently 27. Back then I believe that I made a rookie mistake, but have since learned my lesson and have taken precautions so that this doesn't happen again. I'm an avid mountain biker. Ever since I was about 13 to 14, I've always loved riding on the trails. It was good exercise, but I mostly liked to just listen to music and pedal. Never tried to time myself on a particular trail or anything. All I really did was keep track of my miles, so I remember this one day in particular. It may sound a tad bit far-fetched, so I welcome skepticism with open arms. I'm simply trying to get this off of my chest, and hopefully it's a wake-up call for anyone that was as trusting as I was. So I decided to go on a day ride at this one spot. I had been there before, but it wasn't one of my go-to trails, so I wasn't super familiar with it. I was familiar enough with it though to where I would be okay going down the trails I had done in the past, so upon getting there, I was getting my pack ready. I met this one girl that was doing the same. We started talking and hit it off pretty well. At the time, she honestly seemed like someone I could be friends with. She introduced me to her boyfriend, who was also a mountain biker. Once again, no red flags. Very friendly. They seemed to have a very healthy relationship. They both seemed to be about my age, ballpark, give or take. They asked me if I wanted to take a ride with them down their favorite trail. I didn't see any harm in it. Plus I wanted to learn the area better for potential future rides, so the trail was one that I had never been on before. The two of them were also faster than me. Like a lot faster. I never backed down from a challenge. I kept up, albeit probably being about 10 feet behind them the whole time. We stopped briefly to take a water break, and I noticed that the girl had strategically left her backpack open. Like she closed it, but then opened it back up a little bit. Seemed harmless then, but makes more sense now, without any sort of warning, and while I was taking a pee break in the trees. The two of them started laughing and took off. I was in a compromised position, so I had to hurry up and conclude my business to be able to catch them. By the time I made it back to my bike, they were both completely out of sight. Not to mention, both of my tires had been slashed. I was stranded. I sat down for about 10 minutes to decide what I was going to do. The sun was at peak capacity, and I remember feeling extremely lightheaded, though I'm pretty sure this was related to shock. I grabbed my bike and started walking down the trail. After about 15 minutes of walking, I came across a wire on the trail. It was tied onto two smaller trees. Had I been riding, that could have easily slit my throat. But the fact that they went through the trouble of slashing my tires made me question this. I hadn't seen them, so this may or may not have been them. Or they could have potentially left it there to try and snare another rider. I honestly don't know and don't much think about that part anymore. The what-ifs make the whole thing more frustrating. Regardless, I used my Swiss Army knife to remove the wire. I wasn't about to go any further down the trail, so I pushed my bike in the opposite direction that I came from. Close to 6 miles later, I made it back to my car. There is a bike rental shop nearby that I stopped at and asked them about the two. I gave them a description of the two, but wasn't able to give them enough to have them identified. They offered to call the police, but after the day I had, I just wanted to go home. I do regret this, because over the years I had always wondered if they did this to anyone else. I did feel a level of guilt over this. I have never been back to that trail. I'm still a mountain biker, but I quit going alone since then. Thankfully my husband is a fellow mountain biker, and I always have a buddy. Please stay safe everyone, and don't always trust a pretty face.